Hello everyone, I will start sharing my screen and start this presentation. So my name is Marina de Moraes Lopes. I'm a master's student at the University of Glasgow and I'm here to present my research on overcoming mass tourism in the Caribbean small island development states. I left here my contact just in case anyone has a question or wants to connect. I will try to leave it also in the comment section to get my LinkedIn. I don't really know how it works yet, but if I can, I will. To start, I have divided this presentation in four main parts, which is mass tourism and classic development theories, tourism in the Caribbean small island development states, new perspectives, and finally conclusion. I started researching it because debating mass tourism in the Caribbean is essential to guarantee the long-term resilience of the tourism industry. Because the small island development states of the Caribbean are overly dependent on the tourism revenues. They have fragile economic and environmental situations and one of the highest levels of leakage in the world. To go with these research, my methodology was basically qualitative methods and secondary research. These are some of the main texts that I have used to research, not all for sure, but these are some of the important ones. So I use Clemmer with cultural development and social theory to talk about the development theories. There's a Polypatulo with last resorts, and I used Weaver and Peters to debate the idea of sustainable mass tourism. Oops. Okay. My research question was how can the small island development states in the Caribbean overcome the established mass tourism model? And the hypothesis was that mass tourism was built based on the idea of classic development theory, and to overcome it, the industry must detach itself from this idea. I'll start with the mass tourism classic development theory. If I hurry a little bit, I'm sorry. I know we have limited time. So the classic development theories are the ones that were leading the development projects from the 60s onwards. So they were more related to the liberal theories with overly economic approach, incentives to foreign direct investments, industrialization, and internationalization of markets and companies. So the main measurement adopted was the GDP. So the bigger the GDP, the more developed the country would be. Nowadays, of course, there was a paradigm shift, and there was a surge of alternative development, such as human development and sustainable development. I will focus for sure on sustainable development because nowadays, ever since the introduction of the Brundtland Report, I don't know if I said it wrong, sorry, in 1987, the tourism industry now, more than 30 years after this report, is all about sustainable development, tours and hotels, even airlines, they claim the SIG for sustainability. There is no way of thinking other than sustainable. And what was interesting on researching on the topic was that some academics today will say that even though the industry claims sustainability, there's actually no substantial change on most of the practices. So there is, even if companies are claiming sustainability, the changes they make are more superficial and not really a deep change into their business models. So these started making me think about the sustainable mass tourism debate. And for that, I mainly use Weaver's idea of basically summarizing it very briefly. There's much more to it than what I'm going to say now. but the author believes that the mass tourism will go towards sustainability as being the way to survive. According to him, there are different ways that mass tourism can reach sustainability, but at the end, they will become sustainable. In my research, I'll take an approach that um, mass tourism cannot be sustainable. The ideal scenario would be an abolition of mass tourism practices, but it has also concluded that with the setups we have today with capitalism, it's very hard to reach these abolition of mass tourism. As you can see from the quote, experience with such crises indicate their radical or revolutionary response that fundamentally questions the ethics of capitalism as per the transformational perspective is unlikely, at least in economically well-developed societies. So these represent a big barrier in the abolition of mass tourism. So moving forward, the research will go to tourism in the Caribbean small island developing states. And to start talking about it, I would like to introduce the main challenges that are faced by small island developing states, being limited resources because of the limited space. Climate change is a big threat, especially when talking about tourism in these countries. More frequent natural disasters means that tourists will not go there or will reschedule their trips or go somewhere else. There's small domestic markets. In the Caribbean, there's a social conflict due to colonial past, and there's a lack of economic competitiveness, especially now where they rely a lot on the tourism industry. So the tourism in the Caribbean started with a boom on foreign direct investment to build tourism infrastructure, such as airports, hotels, roads, and of course, the application of foreign direct investments have benefits, as we can see from the quote here. It's usually expected to integrate the countries into global economy, broadening the economic base, creating jobs, helping to get global tourism started, augmenting the limited financial resources and skills that are available domestically by raising the profile of the destination in the world tourism market, and gaining access to global distribution networks. Even with the good benefits, it is also stated that for a country to receive all these benefits in the long term, their economic capacity to absorb these investments is very important. So for the Caribbean small island developing states that had recently left a situation of colonialism with fragile economics, it is very hard for them to have these organized economic capacity to absorb all these investments that were made. So the long-term results ended up being dependency, foreign dominance of the tourism industry, shrinking of traditional sectors, leakage, big international debts, high taxes paid by locals, and the economic spills to local communities were very small. Now they touched on the economic aspects of the tourism in the Caribbean. We'll move on to the social aspects and talk about the construction of the paradise image of the Caribbean. So basically, if you Google the Caribbean, you're gonna find beautiful beaches with white sand and the blue ocean. But this construction of image created an erasure of local and cultural and historical aspects. For example, they said in 2008 that when the English-speaking Caribbeans was marketed to the British market, they would be said to be an escape to an extension of Britain endowed with the attributes of tropical weather and landscape. So these would attract the kind of tourist that is not very interested in seeing local culture, because they're basically traveling to their country but with tropical attributes and landscapes. This has also created a lack of diversification in the tourism product, because every destination marketed the same exact thing. And this idea of a non space of culture, of not having locals or local culture, has also traced the parallel of formal colonial practices, where with the erasure of local traditions and the local culture. So in this slide, we have this table that separated the long-term impacts, separated in social and economic. And for the social ones, we can see the restriction to access of certain areas, basic service only to tourists, creation of resentment, erasure of locals, resemblance to formal colonial practices. And for the economic side, we can see imports of products. So there is no links with local producers because hotels prefer to import what they need. And there is weakening of traditional sectors because the younger generations want to go and work in the tourism enclaves instead of agriculture. There's leakage, there are high taxes and international debt. So right now, the Caribbean is facing a era of fall of investments, which has and also an increasing competition in the Pacific, with new paradise-like destinations being developed there. So they're also fighting for the same markets. And this is something that started making me think that for future research, it could be questioned if this is a perfect scenario for a structural change in the Caribbean tourism industry, because this fall of investments is putting the countries of the region together and having to cooperate as a region to get past this situation. And these would lead to a diversification of their tourism product, because now instead of fighting for the same market, they would have to come together and integrate. Something else that I was wondering as a new trend, and that could also be a good research, would be how COVID-19 can affect the markets in the Caribbean, small island developing states. Finally, these are the references for the quotes that I have in this slideshow. And to conclude, I would like to go back and see my hypothesis and pass it. I'm sorry. Here. So my hypothesis was that mass tourism was built based on the idea of classic development theory, and to overcome it, the industry must detach itself from this idea. At the end of my research, I have reached a conclusion that my hypothesis was not verified, because even though there are resemblances of mass tourism with the classic theory, there was already a paradigm shift. We are already in the sustainable development era, and there's still no overcoming the mass tourism. So I decided to focus a little bit on the debate of how mass tourism infrastructure can promote sustainability. So how can mass tourism become an ally of sustainable development? Because as said before, the research doesn't believe that mass tourism can become sustainable. So the focus would be, a more productive focus would be how to make mass tourism work for the promotion of sustainability. So I have concluded that to overcome mass tourism in the Caribbean, the most adequate path would be she worked on strong tourism the involvement of all stakeholders, and also some change in policy and international governance to ensure or to work towards a plan for debt relief, institutional strengthening, some structural change at domestic and international levels, rebranding, and investment in local and creative initiatives. So I started researching these as a way of learning more about a topic that I'm interested in and that one day might lead to my master thesis. So this is definitely a work in progress. So if you have any question or even any feedback, if you disagree or if you agree with me, if you have anything to tell me, any kind of feedback, constructive criticism, I am here to hear it and learn from it. And I really don't know how the comments work yet, but I hope to hear from you. And thank you so much for watching it until the end.